How's it going, everyone? Sorry for my response right. That was today is July 11th, 2021, and today we're going to forecast the wind shear for this hurricane season. Will we see less wind shear than average, or will we see more wind shear than average, which could inhibit hurricane development? But before I begin, make sure to subscribe. If you want to see more weather records, make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather records. So let's begin by taking a look at the current wind shear map, all four throughout the Atlantic at this point. And you see there's a lot of wind shear pretty much throughout the Caribbean Sea at this point. So for the most part right now, tropical cyclone development for most of the Atlantic is unlikely, and there isn't any area where the wind shear is very light. So as a result, tropical cyclone development is pretty much near impossible in the near future. However, that will change because, for one thing, we're still early in the hurricane season. It's only July, and you need to keep in mind that it's all until August and September when we begin to see that wind shear die down a little bit, and that's when we begin to see the heart of the hurricane season during the months of August and September. So we aren't quite at that time yet, but we will eventually. And as a result, this wind shear will eventually weaken, whether we're expecting more wind shear than average this August and September or not. The wind shear will likely decrease as we head further and further into the summer. But in terms of the wind shear in the specific areas, you see that the Caribbean right now has above average vertical wind shear at this time, and this is between the heights of 850 millibars, which is closer to the lower levels of the atmosphere, while we have and it's measured up to the height where 200 air pressure of 200 millibars is located. And for the most part, we're seeing strong vertical wind shear between those levels of the atmosphere. And as for the Atlantic at this time, we're seeing below average wind shear for pretty much the entire tropical Atlantic. However, we're still seeing just enough wind shear to inhibit tropical cyclone development for the time being. And your question might be, well, it of course is in this video, is will we see that wind shear decrease as we head further into the later months, or not? I shouldn't say decrease, but will we see below average wind shear for the rest of the hurricane season, or will we see above average wind shear for the rest of the hurricane season, which could inhibit tropical cyclone development? So to first determine it, we first need to take a look at, of course, the Enzo pattern, which is a huge pattern we need to take a look at when talking about the wind shear in the tropical Atlantic. And you see that this is as of June 10th, 2021. So around a month this forecast was made. We should get a new forecast relatively soon. But as of right now, you see that the forecast from the National Hurricane Center is that the CPC is that we're going to see a neutral phase all the way up to the month of September. However, we do see that La Nina probability increases as we head closer and closer to the more active months of the hurricane season, which is concerning because if we do see a La Nina, then that means the wind shear will be a lot lighter in the tropical Atlantic. Taking a look at the current sea surface temperatures, more specifically in the Nino 3.4 region, you see that temperatures since the month of November 2020 have rebounded closer to average, and it's expected to remain right around average sea surface temperature for the next couple months before again lowering more as we head further and further into the fall months, which means that we could see less wind shear as a result of a growing possibility of a La Nina. However, the forecast currently is bringing a most likely chance for a neutral phase through this month of July, through August, through September, and it's not until the month of October where the CPC is forecasting La Nina for the months of October and November and even into December. However, the good news is that at that point, that's when the hurricane season should be winding down. But again, a neutral phase, like I've been saying in my previous videos, isn't that much different from a La Nina phase. So we still could see less wind shear than average from a neutral phase throughout the tropical Atlantic, and it could be supported by other patterns in the tropical Atlantic, which could promote less vertical wind shear than average. So as a result, I do expect less wind shear than average because during a neutral phase, it's very similar to a La Nina. So I should, and plus it takes a couple months for a neutral phase to really kick in. So it's gonna take some time before we could in actuality say we're gonna be in a neutral phase. As currently the pattern is still, the atmospheric pattern is still lagging behind what the sea surface temperatures, are at this point. So we're still technically maybe in a La Nina phase, but we're gonna be in a neutral phase very soon, and this should continue. But again, there's still a pretty high possibility of a La Nina, so we can't completely rule it out either. But even then, the wind shear during a neutral phase is very similar to a La Nina, and typically during a La Nina phase, we see more sinking air in this region, more stable air in the equatorial Pacific region, and then more hurricanes as a result of more lift in the atmosphere, as a result of more sinking in this region. So it promotes a lot more lift in the Atlantic, and wind shear is a lot less because there's a lot less low pressure system development in this region, and since the air is a lot more stable, there's less strong upper level winds coming out of these low pressure systems, which would move which would move east and into the Atlantic against the low level trade winds. So as a result, during a La Nina phase, we see a lot less wind shear because the upper level winds associated with tropical cyclones or tropical waves in the tropical Atlantic will move into the east, the west, which would mean that it will coincide with the lower level trade winds in the main development region, and that would promote less wind shear. So as a result, I do expect less wind shear, whether it is a La Nina or a neutral phase. During a El Nino, we typically see fewer hurricanes, but a chance of an El Nino, it's nearly impossible, I'd say, as the chance is very, very low for an El Nino over the next couple months. But the Enzo pattern isn't the only thing we need to take a look at. We of course need to take a look at computer models and climatology computer models more specifically, because they give a good idea of how much wind shear we could expect over the next couple of months. So if we were to take a look, this is a monthly forecast from the CFS climatology model, and for the month of August, the good news is that it's expecting a little bit more wind shear than usual towards the western main development region, which would definitely slow down tropical cyclone formation. And this even extends just to the south of a lot of the Caribbean islands. This extends to the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. And we do see a lack of wind shear throughout the United States and a small portion just to the north. However, a lot of the areas where the wind shear is lower than average, it's too far north for any legitimate tropical cyclone to form. As you see, the areas where there's lower level wind shear, it's either all over land way too far north where the sea surface temperatures are cooler than average, and or they're far to the east, northeast, I should say, closer to Spain, and European countries. So as a result, so the good news is that the CFS model is currently expecting higher than average wind shear in this region, which would mean that that would certainly inhibit tropical cyclone formation. And then, however, it completely changes and it becomes completely concerning when we move to the month of September, because you see that all the Atlantic at this point is under lower than average wind shear, which would promote tropical cyclone formation. You see in the main development region, they're all in the purples, which means that there's lower upper level winds than average in this region, and that would certainly promote more tropical cyclone formation. Taking a look at the wind shear between areas where the air pressure is at 200 millibars or 850 millibars, you see that again in the month of September. You see that a lot of the upper level winds in the upper to mid levels of the atmosphere are moving towards the east, which is going the same direction as the lower level winds would in the main development region, which is coming towards which is pointing towards the west. And since the upper level winds and the lower level winds would move in the same direction, that would promote more tropical cyclone formation. However, it is a little bit to the north, but I wouldn't say it's that far up to the north. And you see the Caribbean also has lighter wind shear as well. So there's certainly something to keep in mind that September, the CFS model is predicting lower than average wind shear. And then headed into the month of October, you're going to see that the lower than average wind shear continues, which would certainly promote tropical cyclone formation. However, at this point, the main development region isn't as major of an area where tropical cyclones would form in the month of October. We more need to focus more specifically on the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. And the good news is that the Gulf of Mexico is experiencing a little bit stronger wind shear than average based off CFS model, but it's completely different closer to the Caribbean, where the wind shear is around average to lighter than average, which would promote more tropical cyclone formation. But I'd say it's pretty average when it comes to wind shear in the October. And then November, it doesn't really matter that much, but it is still worrying that the wind shear will be lighter than average during the month of October in November throughout the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, which is an area that is most likely to receive tropical cyclone formation during that month. So as a result, I'd expect less wind shear than average overall for most of the Atlantic, based off of what the CFS model is saying. Taking a look maybe at the 3 month average, because that gives a good idea of what to expect over the next 3 months when it comes to wind shear. Let's look at the heart of the hurricane season, and you see that during the heart of the hurricane season, the main development region should primarily be average to maybe below average when it comes to wind shear, which is certainly concerning. But the good news is that some of the Gulf of Mexico is currently forecasted to receive more wind shear than average, which would promote less tropical cyclone formation. So overall, I do expect less wind shear than average in the main development region, which is the most concerning part. But the good news is that the CFS model is predicting a little bit stronger wind shear than average, but I don't think it will make up for the fact that the main development region will receive less wind shear than average. But another thing we also need to take a look at is also the precipitation forecast in the along the African coast, because that plays another factor, the monsoon pattern in Africa. Because if there is higher than average precipitation throughout Africa, that would mean that the wind shear will be lighter, because the monsoon steers the upper level winds towards the west rather than towards the east during a non-monsoon season. So as a result, since during the monsoon the upper level winds face the east, it'll pretty much go the same direction as the lower level trade winds, which face towards the east, which will promote more tropical cyclone formation. So taking a look at the 3 month precipitation anomaly forecast from the CFS model to see if we're going to see a strong monsoon season along the coast of Africa. You see that it's a lot more moist than average along the African coast, which is certainly concerning, because that will promote less wind shear than average if the monsoon is very strong. Taking a look at the studies that pretty much exemplify this point, that a strong monsoon season could promote more tropical cyclone formation. You see that in this study, they found that positive Eastern Pacific sea surface temperature anomaly and negative Saharan desert rainfall anomalies occur in conjunction with enhanced shear over the main development region. So what this pretty much means is that if there's less rainfall than usual over the Saharan desert region, then that means that there would be more wind shear over the main development region. However, if there's higher precipitation anomalies in the Saharan desert region, that would mean less wind shear over the main development region, which will promote more tropical cyclone formation. And also, a monsoon season would produce more tropical waves and low pressure systems that could develop into tropical cyclones. And right now, the CFS model is forecasting more moist than average conditions throughout the Atlantic. So at this point, I'd expect that the wind shear will primarily be lighter than average as a result of a stronger monsoon over Africa that will steer those upper level winds towards the east. So as a result, I do expect less wind shear for this hurricane season, which is certainly concerning as that would promote more tropical cyclone formation. And I do expect it to be a more active hurricane season than usual because we're going to be either in a La Nina or neutral phase, which I expect would bring less wind shear. And the analog years, during a year after La Nina, there's typically less wind shear, so I expect less wind shear because of that. The CFS model is forecasting less wind shear in the main development region, as well as a monsoon over Africa that will promote less wind shear. So I do expect it to be more active hurricane season because wind shear will be lighter. But yeah, guys, I think you guys make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. I hope you guys have a good day.